This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. I'm a big fan of shave soap. I've been using different brands for years, and I recently gave Sterling's shave soaps a try, and I've been very happy with the results. Sterling's shave soaps give you a great lather and a frictionless feel that allows the razor to glide right over the skin for a super close shave. No skin irritation and a clean, refreshing feel with no soapy residue after. I can tell you without a doubt, it's simply the best shave I've ever had. And my wife has noticed too. And here's the thing. With the ability to purchase 1-ounce sample pucks, you can try out different scents to find the right one for you. Give Sterling Soap a try today. Visit sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. It's January 10th, and on this day in 1982, it was Joe Montana to Dwight Clark in what became known simply as The Catch. This was the NFC Championship game between the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers on a balmy day at Candlestick Park. The winner would punch their ticket to Super Bowl 16. Now, the Cowboys were the veteran playoff-hardened club, while the Niners were the new kids on the block. The Cowboys trailed 21-20 in the fourth quarter when good fortune began to shine upon them. Everson Walls recovered a 49er fumble to set Dallas up for the go-ahead touchdown. Here's Vin Scully calling the action for CBS that day.
Tony Hill wide left. Drew Pearson right. We have Springs and Dorsett once again with Doug Crosby, the tight end. Play action fake, and White setting up into the end zone to Crosby. Touchdown.
That gave the Cowboys a 27-21 lead. Well, 3 plays later, the Niners gave it right back.
1st and 10 from the 35. Montana setting up to throw deep, throws it high, down in the corner. Everson Walls takes it away from Freddie Solomon. 1st and 10, Dallas on the Cowboy 26.
That was Wall's second interception of a Joe Montana pass that day, and he was a huge bandit for Dallas all season with an NFL best 11 interceptions during that year. So things looking pretty good for the Cowboys at that point. But they couldn't get more than a couple of first downs before punting it back to the Niners. With 4:54 to play, San Francisco started their final drive at their own 11-yard line. A combination of Linville Elliott rushes and a couple of Freddie Solomon catches, quarterback Joe Montana ushered the Niners down to the Cowboys' 6-yard line. With 58 seconds to play, facing a 3rd and 3 and needing a touchdown, head coach Bill Walsh called for an old 49er standard, sprint right option. Here's the call from the 49ers play-by-play voice, Don Klein.
Clark goes to the right. They set up a slot back. Solomon in the hole there. Running backs are split behind Montana. 3rd and 3. He has the ball. Montana rolling out the right. Looking toward the end zone. Throwing under pressure. Throws his pass. Caught by Clark. Clark got a touchdown. Dwight Clark has it. It's a touchdown for the 49ers.
Now, a couple of things about that play. First, the Niners had scored on that play back in the first quarter with Montana throwing to Freddie Solomon. Solomon was the first option on the final touchdown as well, but he slipped making his cut and he was covered. Second, Montana said years later that sprint right option had been in their playbook for 3 years, and he had never thrown it to Dwight Clark in a game. Third, Montana's pump fake before the throw was a big key to success of that play. It got 3 Dallas linemen to jump and gave Montana time and space to throw it. And lastly, the design of the pass option to Clark was always to throw it high. If he couldn't get it, then it would sail out of bounds and they would get one more shot. But in practice, Montana had always thrown it either too low or way too high. Clark said in his remembrance of the play that this was the first time that Montana actually put it in a place that only he could get it. The 49ers took the lead 28-27, held on to that lead, and advanced to Super Bowl 16. Interesting fact, a future NFL quarterback that would throw his own share of memorable touchdowns was at Candlestick Park that day. 4-year-old Tom Brady was with his parents rooting for the 49ers and said that this was his first sports memory as a kid. On that same day, across the country in the AFC Championship game, another memorable game was going on, though for something completely different: the weather. The San Diego Chargers were playing the Cincinnati Bengals for the right to face the Niners in Super Bowl 16. The temperature at game time was -9, but with a sustained wind of 27 miles per hour, it made it feel like -59, and it became known as the Freezer Bowl. It had been a set of January extremes for the Chargers. I talked about their double overtime win against Miami the week before in the warmth and humidity of South Florida. In that one, players, especially Kellen Winslow, were completely exhausted by the conditions. Winslow had lost 13 pounds during that game. Well, in this one, it was a different set of circumstances. The weather also figured into how the Bengals approached the coin toss. Now, typically, a team wants the football either to start the game or to start the second half. Instead, Cincy figured that the wind would have an effect on San Diego's passing game that featured future Hall of Famers Dan Fouts, Charlie Joyner, and Winslow. And so they chose their side of the field to defend, forcing San Diego to go into the wind in the first half. So this is one of those rare instances when the Chargers got the ball to start both halves. But the gamble paid off. The Bengals scored 10 points in the first quarter, and Rolf Benirschke's field goal try later in the quarter was knocked down by the wind. After trading touchdowns in the second quarter, the Bengals took control and won 27-7 to advance to Super Bowl 16 to play the 49ers. On this day in 2004, another team that would eventually punch their ticket to the Super Bowl had to come up with an amazing play to get past the divisional playoff game. This was the Carolina Panthers playing on the road in St. Louis against the Rams. Now, the Panthers had been the cardiac cats that season, winning 3 games in the regular season in overtime, and 7 of their 11 wins that season had been by 3 points or less. So when this game went to overtime, there was no hurry, no panic. Heck, by this point, quarterback Jake Delhomme felt like he was playing with house money. After going undrafted, getting waived by his home state Saints, playing in NFL Europe, and not winning the starting job for the Panthers out of training camp for a team that had won just 8 games in the past 2 seasons, anything up to this point was absolute gravy. Carolina actually controlled the game for the better part of 3 quarters, but their 23-12 lead in the fourth quarter started to dwindle. If Rams coach Mike Martz had had any confidence in Mark Bulger, his quarterback, St. Louis may have won this game in regulation, but Bulger had thrown a couple of picks, and Martz decided to play it conservatively down the stretch and play for a game-tying field goal in hopes that his team would win it in overtime. Both teams had an opportunity to win the game in overtime, but both John Casey and Jeff Wilkins missed field goals in OT number 1, and the game went to its second overtime. After Bulger's 3rd interception of the day, the Panthers took advantage with a play they'd just installed into the offense called X-Clown. Here's Dick Stockton with a call for CBS that day.
Down and 14 from the 31 of Carolina. Delhomme fires to an open Smith. Steve Smith is going to go all the way. No flags down. Smith scores, and the Carolina Panthers win in overtime. On a 3rd and 14. 69-yard play. Unbelievable.
The Cardiac Cats still had a pulse. They'd go on to beat Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game the following week and make the trip to Super Bowl 38 in Houston. How about we move away from the gridiron and instead go to something that you just don't see every day on a tennis court? On the same day that Dwight Clark was making the catch in San Francisco and the Bengals and Chargers were freezing their keisters off in Cincinnati, John McEnroe and Jimmy Connors were playing indoors in the finals of the Michelob Light Challenge in Chicago. The fans watching that day saw a great tennis match. It was high-level tennis and really an exhibition setting that you might expect in a U.S. Open final. Now, of course, McEnroe and Connors each had oversized egos. and they got into some shouting matches throughout the course of the afternoon. There was a usual complaining about line calls, umpire decisions, so much so that each player actually received penalty points. Well, in the fifth set of this one, Connors had had enough of Johnny Mac's antics, his stalling, his complaining, his arguing. Well, first he approached the net, and then he hopped over the net and slowly walked toward John. They got face to face, with Connors putting his finger in John's face, and there was a little push of the hand, and then a few of the linesmen had to step in between them to keep it from getting out of hand. Eventually, Connors returned to his side and closed out the fifth set, winning 6-4. They had a couple of memorable matches in the following months, with McEnroe winning in straight sets at the U.S. Pro Indoor Championships, and then Connors battling through another 5-setter in the Wimbledon final that year as he beat McEnroe. And in 1989, Wayne Gretzky assisted 4 goals as his LA Kings beat his former team, the Edmonton Oilers, 5-4, and in the process passed Gordie Howe on the NHL's all-time points list. And time now for That Ain't Got Nothing to Do with Sports Fun Fact. If you happen to be wearing a Gore-Tex jacket today, then you should know that the waterproof material is Teflon. You know, the same stuff that makes your frying pan non-stick. And that's been stretched out very, very thinly. Hey, this is Steve White, the host of This Day in Sports History. I appreciate you taking some time to listen to today's episode, and if you've gotten this far at the end of each episode or a couple of episodes over the last month, then you know I've been talking about making the short list for the best sports talk podcast in 2024. Well, the voting closes on the 13th, so if you haven't voted yet, and you wouldn't mind helping me out a little bit, now's the time to make your voice heard. I've put a link in the show notes that will take you right to the page. It'll take about 30 seconds, and if you do that, I'd appreciate it. Thanks. Have a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fans. We've got some exciting news to share with you. 6 of our podcasts from the Sports History Network have made it to the final round of voting for the prestigious Sports Podcast Awards. Here are their shows and the categories. Historically Speaking Sports and This Day in Sports History are both competing for Best Sports Talk Podcast. No Nonsense Old School Weightlifting History is in the running for Best Fitness, Health, and Wellbeing Podcast. When Football Was Football is up for Best Sports Documentary Podcast. Wrestling with Heels On has entered the ring for Best Wrestling Podcast. And Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing is fighting for the title for Best Combat Sports Podcast. Now, of course, we need your help to take home the championship for each of these awesome shows. All you gotta do is head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/vote, cast your vote for your favorite shows, or better yet, all 6 of them. Again, every vote counts, and we got to show the world how much sports history really matters. So thank you for your support and making Sports History Network the headquarters for sports yesteryear. But again, don't wait. You got to go vote now. That's over at sportshistorynetwork.com/vote.